flag, Carrie?
I don't know if everybody saw, I updated the agenda and the information sheet since Ben added the new policy.
I'm just pulling it up now.
Okay.
Are we good, Travis? Yep. Okay, good. Welcome, everybody. Let's call the meeting to order, and we will say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job, team. All right.
Hey, whole kitty.
I'm
so sorry.
Sorry. We do have the consent agenda before us. We have meeting minutes, the approval of the agenda, and payment of bills. Ben, we were going to add the one item.
Yes, the student board representative policy was an added part to our agenda. So if you have the new board agenda in front of you, which was sent out to you today, but then also Joanne changed the information sheet, you should have that in front of you, which includes item C under board action items.
Okay. Anything else, Ben?
Nope.
Okay, with that update, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. I heard Mike and
Support.
Jessica. Okay. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Joanne, will you do roll call, please?
Sure. Tony?
Yes.
Alicia?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes. Okay.
Who did I miss? Anybody?
Me.
Jessica.
Did you say
I'm sorry.
Jessica? Yes.
Thank you. We have 6 yeses.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. So now we will move on to Ben for the superintendent report. Ben?
Great, thank you very much. Thank all of you as well for being willing to still come together and meet so that we can do some of our essential business. I know that it's difficult in this situation as everyone is, under an order to stay home and be safe. And so we're trying to comply with that, but still be able to be efficient and do our business. So I know it's not as optimal to meet virtually like this, but I do appreciate all of you, being willing to come on and do that. I'm going to talk about a couple items during our board discussion tonight relative to the budget and also relative to what school will look like hopefully in the fall and some work that we've been doing. And that's a large part of what I'd like to talk about. But I'd also like to just share that we are moving forward with plans on some of our end of year ceremonies. We have a high school team that's working very diligently on how to make sure that we can still hold a graduation, a prom ceremony, and those types of events for our students. Right now, we have some dates set out for those. It's going to be July 19th. We're looking to try and make sure that we schedule that far enough out where we hope that at that time we'll be able to start gathering in some fashion. We're going to be taking our guidance from the state and learning a little bit more about what we have to do to comply with all of the recommendations from both the governor's office, the legislature, as well as the health department. But at this point, we believe that we will be having a ceremony. It will just be the type of ceremony we're going to have. So we're planning for a few different types We have a virtual graduation ceremonies that are being planned for our elementary school kids, our 5th grade students. And so some of our elementary principals are working on that now. To give you a little bit of an update on the current projects that are happening with the bond, we received word from the governor's office that construction work could resume last week, Thursday. So our crews got right on it. They immediately started working again. And so we've been feverishly trying to help make it so that they can get into our spaces and do the work they need to do. Our elementary schools, obviously, we're well on track, and those are picking right back up. Our elementary teachers have cleaned out classrooms. As you know, our last board meeting, we met to do asbestos abatement. That asbestos abatement is commencing here shortly. They're going to be taking down the ceiling grids in the corridors. They're going to be installing the air conditioning systems. And so the work that's going to be done is going to be able to be extensive and fast track. They're going to gain a little bit of extra time just because of the fact that physically our students are not meeting in the building. So I'd much prefer to see the students in the building, but I guess a side benefit of that is that we're able to move forward on some of our construction. The high school stadium is also something that's well underway. As a part of that project, they have to do the administrative building as well. And so that building, along with the high school stadium, will commence shortly. The high school stadium is already well underway. If you've been through the high school student parking lot and you just look at that space, it's almost unrecognizable. There's quite a lot of dirt that's being moved. All of our contractors are under very strict guidelines in terms of how they have to work and maintain social distancing. They're wearing masks. We have a variety of hand wash stations that are all over the district for them to be able to use and still comply with the recommendations and guidance that they're given. So I believe that they're doing a very good job of staying on top of that. RC has been working very diligently to ensure that things definitely are possible and moving forward. So I'm excited about that particular piece of our operation. I would also just like to say that because of the fact that we have more questions than answers at this point, I am meeting weekly with leaders from around the state, the county. I try to stay very connected to policymakers as well as some of our association contacts. And so as a result of that, I'm being updated pretty much daily in terms of what we can expect to see in terms of planning. And there's just so many moving parts right now. So as a result of that, we had our committee meetings, and I know we're going to hear some of the work that was done at our committee meetings this week. But my recommendation is that we set up an entire day of committee meetings on, so basically another round of committee meetings on the week of the week during Memorial Day week. So we also have committee meetings scheduled again June 8th. I think we should keep those. My recommendation is that we meet more frequently because of the fact that there are so many pieces that are changing and moving. And I understand it's an extra day of meetings, but I do think it will be well worth our time. I know Joanne has sent out an email, and I'm also just checking with the members of the Building and Site Committee, just for efficiency's sake, for those board members that tend to attend multiple committee meetings, if we could even get the Building and Site meeting scheduled shortly after our finance meeting, which would mean that we would have all 4 committee meetings in a row, and you'd make a long morning out of it, but then we would have those complete. So if you could just respond to Joanne, your availability, that would be great. And then we can get that moving forward. So I have a lot more to share during our budget and what the next school year looks like during our board discussion. But there's certainly a lot of positive things happening in the face of some of the challenges that we're seeing with COVID-19. We're delivering, thousands and thousands of meals every week. We continue to do that with a very dedicated team of employees that are putting kids out and families first and their nutritional needs. We have a very, I believe, very solid learning plan that is continuing. I don't believe that it can replace the work that our teachers do in a face-to-face setting, but our teachers are working hard to meet with kids and to provide some semblance of structure to them. I would also tell you that early weeks, the participation has been very, very good. There are some signs, and I think it's natural that participation is starting to drop off a little bit, but overall, we've been very encouraged and surprised by the amount of participation we've had from our students. So things continue to move forward. We continue to educate people. I had a conversation with a friend who's in another industry, and I think that teachers take a lot of flack in different areas. And I think anyone who has children, myself included, can certainly appreciate the work teachers do over these last couple months, and seeing just the challenges that we face as it relates to educating children. And I also would say that I don't know of many other industries that can completely change their entire methodology of primary delivery. Most businesses just shut down, or they say we can't do anything until until we're allowed to. We've continued to work and continued to educate kids, and we've done so at the drop of a hat. So kudos to our staff and our teachers who are on the front lines doing a lot of the work. And I just would say that I'm proud of our profession for being willing to change quickly. We're not usually known to be ones that change that quickly. And so I think this is a testament to people digging in and really getting to work. So there are lots of things to be positive about in the midst of some challenges. So thank you for all of your support, and also to the community for the support that they've given to our staff during this time.
Any questions for Ben? Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
I know on behalf of the board, we can't thank you and your team and the staff and everybody who's providing services to our students. And I would agree, I don't have children at home, but I'm trying to imagine having my 4 kids at home, trying to teach them and work full time.
Yes,
so bless your hearts for all that you do. Okay, so with that, we are going to ask Mr. Jacob Winter to give us a student representative update. And Jacob, this will be your last time at this meeting. And I think we all want to thank you for everything you've done to get us this far. So go ahead, Jacob.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, this, if everything goes well, will be my last regular meeting. I'm in contact with Mr. Kitchen, seeing if we can put together some process and try to get a replacement, both for the representative and the alternate positions for June. And I hope that we're able to do that. I do think that I probably will be on for the next meeting or two to coach him a little bit. But you know, I'm ready to pass off the reins and let somebody else take it and run. I'll keep my report short today. Most of the things that I talked about at my last report are still happening, where we have ITC presenting our students with news and updates 3 times a week now, actually. And we have people celebrating the seniors through shout outs and decorating their doors, and ABC 12 has picked up on that. And I know that some more things are going to be happening when it comes to celebrating seniors on other local news channels very soon. I do appreciate the board choosing to accept the representative policy that we worked on. I really appreciate everybody putting in the hard work on that, and we arrived at a very good place, and I appreciate everybody who contributed. And I thank also the board for taking it up at this meeting as opposed to some future one, so that we can really solidify this as part of the process on the Board of Education. It really is a great step that we've taken. I hope that I've set some sort of standard for how a representative should serve the student body, and I appreciate the administration and the board for taking that up and allowing a student to come on and give the input, because I really do feel like already it's made a positive impact in the school and for the parents and for everybody. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve in this capacity.
Thanks, Jacob. Any questions for Jacob?
I just want to say Jacob, you've been excellent. an excellent representative, and I really appreciate all the hard work you've done, the dedication and the commitment that you've had in this position. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay,
I second what Brian said. That's all. Thanks a lot, Jay.
Thank you.
thanks, Jessica. All right.
Oh, Carrie, I think you're muted right now.
I guess I am.
There you go. Sorry about that.
It's okay. So Brian, would you like to start with policy?
Yes. Okay. You may lose the picture because I'm gonna go to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We met Monday, May 11th at 0700. Called the order. Then we the second point on the agenda was student board representative policy. We reviewed and discussed the draft copy of the student board representative policy, and we recommended for board approval at the May 13th, which is tonight or right now, board meeting. And furthermore, Jacob will be working in the process and making recommendations of the successor to his position in the fall. And we have to do that by Zoom also. Then number 3, the policy consideration for distance hybrid learning, ongoing discussions. We discussed things such as attendance, technology needs, grading, and district asset protection. We had good discussions about all of these things. And I'm sure it's going to be an ongoing talk because a lot of what we're discussing, there's a lot of unknowns into the future. So it's going to be a continuing process of talking, dialoguing, and planning as the different things come up in this with what we're facing now. Number 4 was public comment, and there was no public comment. Then we adjourned after that. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian, very much. Jessica has graciously agreed to do the academic achievement report. I wasn't able to be there for the entire meeting, so go ahead, Jessica.
Sure, thanks. We met on May 11th as well. We began at 8:14 a.m. via Zoom. Mr. Micah shared how the district is providing the current virtual school for our students, and then shared about his plans being developed for summer school. And then Mr. Micah shared about 3 possible fall learning modalities, learning plan modalities. And in an effort to be better prepared for the coming school year, the district has the Education 2020 Task Force made up of about 20 people. And they're beginning to consider and develop plans. The 3 different modalities are face-to-face, which would be largely traditional learning 5 days a week at school. Some students may be fully online using a robust learning system like Blackboard or Canvas. And the third option is a hybrid, which right now maybe students being at school 2 days a week physically with weekly modules and smaller work group settings or smaller group settings. All that being said, there's much to consider for how logistically how that'll happen, and we're planning on sending out a survey to parents to get an idea of their plans and concerns for the coming school year 2021. And presently, sports and extracurricular activities are hopefully going to resume in fall. However, all of that said, everything is uncertain. And Mr. Micah also talked about that prom and commencement are planned in July for the same weekend, as he's already shared those dates. And that is it. The meeting adjourned at 9:08 a.m. Any questions? Oh, and there were no public comments or questions.
Any questions for Jessica? Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think Mike is next.
Okay, Finance Committee also met on Monday, the 11th. We started at 9:13. The cash and investment summary and check register are on the website for your review. The check register for April's been reviewed and the following noted. General fund had 67 checks in the amount of $335,658.54. Payroll, 24 checks, $2,799,389.39. Building and site, one check in the amount of $400. Food service, 5 checks in the amount of $128,931.30. Student account fund, 10 checks, $7,547.65. The debt, 2 checks, $1,684,028.95. Bond, 6 checks in the amount of $986,091.33. There's currently one bid pending. It's for the roofing, Tri-County Roofing, who has some of the other contracts. We discussed that briefly, and it will be brought up next month for approval. Chris reported the change order log contains a few minor change orders. We of course didn't see it because we're shut down. We'll look at it when we open up. The majority of the meeting was spent on the pending budget cuts due to the COVID-19 crisis. Expenditures have been curtailed and we are saving as much as possible. These will be one-time savings due to school being shut down. Chris discussed the 2021 budget planning document, which contains 3 case scenarios. Those cases being best, middle, and worst. We're hoping for the best. There will, as Joanna has explained in her Gmail, we will be meeting, and it sounds like it will be the 27th, but that will be announced along with the scheduled June 8th meeting. There were no public comments. We adjourned at 10:35 a.m. Any questions?
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay, and I think finally, building and site, Tony.
I can go ahead and fill in on that. I know Mr. Melky couldn't make the meeting tonight. So I will just kind of fill in that we discussed a variety of things at the meeting. One of the topics that I think is important for everyone to be aware of, I know that the board is aware, but just so that the public knows, we have made a decision to move away from our DM Burr custodial contract. With a lot of the implications surrounding COVID-19 and the things that we have to do in terms of ensuring consistent and high quality cleaning and sanitation protocols for our kids, staff, and families. We are feeling that it's the right time to bring our custodial crew back into more of a district-run setting. So we have been doing interviews with custodial supervisors to have our own custodial supervisor that would report directly to RC. We have final interviews scheduled next week on Tuesday. We had a large number of applicants for custodial positions, and we're feeling very confident that we'll be able to meet the demands and actually exceed the expectation of our families relative to the sanitation and cleanliness of the district. So we certainly don't have anything negative in whatsoever to say about DM Burr. They've been a great partner. This was just the right time for us to save a little bit of money and get back on track and being able to kind of look at locking down our cleaning protocols here inside the district. So we had a large discussion on that. That was a big part of it. Another part that we talked about that I think is important for everybody to know, as a result of a lot of the construction, we're moving a lot of our existing desks, chairs, tables, things that are sitting at our current facilities, and we're making decisions relative to our board policy and what are things that can be disposed of, what are things that have to be auctioned off. And so we've reached out to a company called Bittergy. Bittergy is a company that provides online as well as face-to-face public auctions for public institutions like schools and governmental agencies. So we're going to be using Mary Crapo in the short term for a staging area for a lot of our things. And then we'll be communicating out to the community and the public any items that would be up for auction. So, you know, if there's a particular desk or piece of office furniture that is no longer in use, that the district has no need for, the local community could have the opportunity to bid on those things and then pick them up at Mary Crapo. So the details of that will be coming out over the course of the next month. We're hoping that the auctions commence at sometime in the summer.
Okay, anything else? Any questions for Ben? Okay, now we have 2 board discussion items.
Yeah, so I can start with the very first topic on our agenda tonight is school structures for the next school year. I appreciate us taking this topic up tonight to discuss and hopefully just have a little bit of a dialogue around. I'll start by some things that Mrs. LaNave had shared at her report is that we have established over the last few weeks an E2020 task force. And so our educational task force consists of about 20 educators across our district. We have teachers that are representing all different areas of the district. We have instructional coaches, we have building administrators, we have special ed and support ancillary staff, we have district administrators present as well. And the charge of the task force was to answer the question, what could we reasonably offer and what could school look like in the fall? And so we wanted to make some recommendations to the board and also be able to have a discussion about what this is going to look like. We don't know just quite yet what either the governor or the legislature will require us to do. It's highly possible that we will plan and we will get down the road another month or two, and the legislature and the governor or the governor, depending on the guidance we're given from the state, could make a decision that is contrary to what we're planning, and we would have to adapt. However, it's also highly possible that it will come down to the local districts needing to decide how to provide services to their children. So in the event that that's the case, we want to be prepared, and we also know that we can be flexible enough to make adjustments on the fly if there is a decision that tells us we have to have school a certain way. So to kick things off, I will start by saying that our philosophy is going to be to offer choice to families. And the reason why that's important, outside of just the fact that choice for families is important, what we know is that there are a variety of different feelings and opinions on this crisis. There are opinions ranging from people that feel like if we could have school tomorrow, they would be sitting in the seats having school in face-to-face, in-person setting. We also know that there are people that, perhaps this is changing the way they view education permanently, and that they may decide that they don't want to send their children into large groups anymore. And so as a result of that, we're trying to provide options to our families. So the recommendation from the task force is that we start to communicate out to families 3 potential scenarios. So I'll start with the first one. The first option would be face-to-face instruction. When we talk about face-to-face instruction, we're talking about going back to school largely like we have in the past. There will be obviously many considerations given to the safety aspects of our cleaning and sanitation protocols, how food is handled, how common surfaces are cleaned and all throughout the day sanitized. We're going to be given consideration to hand washing stations and sanitation stations around all the buildings. However, in terms of many of the things that we've known, of course, absent some sort of a guidance from the state that requires it, we're recommending that that be school as normal. It's very difficult to imagine social distancing on a playground of 300 elementary school children, or passing time at a high school where we've got 17-year-olds that will 100% of the time guarantee that they're going to maintain a 6-foot separation. Basically, our feeling is that having a social distancing in a traditional setting is pretty much impossible to guarantee. So we will try to do a lot, but if somebody is choosing that, we certainly can't make any guarantees that there's not going to be, that there is going to be social distancing in all cases. The second option would be similar to what's being experienced right now, and that would be for a fully online experience. This experience would be much more robust than what we're currently offering. We would be providing a fully integrated online assessment platform and teaching and learning platform. The committee has started to review some different learning management systems already, and their recommendation is the product called Canvas. The nice thing about Canvas is that it's widely used across universities right now for providing online instruction. It's got a very nice, clean interface, and it will work with all of our existing technology tools. Another really big benefit of Canvas is that our local ISD is collaborating around that product and how to provide not only support, but consortium pricing, which would mean it would reduce our cost for users, and it would also increase the capacity for training for those teachers. So I feel very confident in our ability to offer an online learning experience that is more robust than what we're currently doing. And so for families that feel as though they just don't have a comfort level to send their children back to school, this provides an option for them where they don't have to go anywhere else. We can provide that right here in Swartz Creek. There's a third option, and the third option is kind of interesting, and it's called a hybrid model. The hybrid model assumes that we would be able to provide smaller groups. So for parents that are somewhat cautious, they would like their children to have some face-to-face, they're willing to do online as well. It provides both of those experiences in one experience. And so a practical explanation of that might be that you have a student who is in a class of 30 students, and it's a 5th grade class. And so that class of 30 students is going to have 15 students meeting on Mondays and Wednesdays, and the other 15 students meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those children will come and work in smaller group settings. They'll be in a part of the building where they will have separate recess and lunch. We would be able to offer not a guarantee of social distancing, but a guarantee of smaller groups. We would be able to provide parents with an opportunity then to allow those children the chance to have a couple times a week where they're meeting with a small group of kids and the teacher, but they also provided their instruction through Canvas online. So all three of those choices, we believe, will appeal to certain parents in our community. What we'd like to do is, after tonight's discussion and subsequent feedback and changes that you provide, we would like to start communicating this out to families, because we need to start to get a sense of how many teachers and how many staff members we're going to need to accommodate each type of learning modality. We recognize that if we get a month down the road and we do all of this planning, that the state could come in and say, you're going to do this. However, we believe that with very few minor adjustments, any one of these models would be likely the scenario that the state would come down and issue. So we would be able to just flexibly move over to one of these different types of learning modalities, and we'd be prepared to meet the challenges that would come from a state mandated type of learning in the fall. So with that being said, I'd like to allow you an opportunity to ask questions, maybe offer any suggestions, and I certainly would welcome the feedback, and then we will start to proceed with communicating out to families and starting to do some surveys.
Questions for Ben or comments?
Ben,
Yes.
have all our students received Chromebooks?
No, not all of our students have received Chromebooks. We have passed out a large number of Chromebooks, I would say to about 25% of our families. Again, we were looking to meet the need for any child that didn't have the adequate technology at home. And so we've provided that. For children that have the technology at home that didn't need to have a school-issued Chromebook, we did not provide the Chromebooks at that time.
Okay, do we know approximately how many students out there don't have either? That still haven't?
Yeah, the number is very, very small. We have, at this point, successfully made contact with the vast majority of our children. There are still a handful of kids who we're reaching out to, we're trying to get a hold of. They may be living with somebody else. It might be living with a grandparent. And so we're working very diligently to try and track them down. But at this point, we've worked through a lot of those issues and made many, many adjustments. So at this point, I can say we've passed out about 900 Chromebooks to students. That number is meeting the demands of those that had a true need. And then, we still have others to deploy if we were to go to some fully online format that required more devices to be checked out.
Thank you.
I got a follow-up question with that, Carrie. As far as the internet service, we know if all of our students have the opportunity to be able to plug in the internet.
Yes. So we don't have obviously 100% assurance that all of our students are able to have internet. We do believe that is the case. However, we've offered a couple different options. Number one, almost every major internet service provider, at least for the next couple months, has offered free service. We've connected people with those resources. We've sent them out. We have a list of about 12 different providers and the way that you can get access to some of those free assets and resources. The other thing that we've done is, and I appreciate Travis Smith and his team for being very forward thinking, we've been able to install several tower hotspots in our high school student parking lot. During the course of the day, or when school is in session, or when somebody needs access to it, I guess anytime, our wireless network can be accessed by driving a car into the parking lot at the high school. You're not to get out of your car, but you would be able to do your school and connect to the internet that way. So anybody that can get either to that site or can reach out to one of the free service providers should have plenty of opportunity to get service.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Go
Hi,
ahead, John.
Tony.
So if we stay the way we are with online, how are we going to do testing? But like a high school student, how are you going to ensure that the student is taking the test and doing the material?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a product that's called Performance Matters that's just getting off the ground and being launched. It's an online assessment program that allows our students to take assessments online. Some of the thought out there is that there's going to be a camera involved in some of those things, in some of those cases. Those are conversations that we're having fairly readily at this point, because obviously the fidelity of the assessments are going to be really important to be able to ensure that we're actually assessing that child and not their parent, right? So there are going to be some pieces that are being worked through with that. I would say the good news on that question is that everybody in the state, and even broader than that, are going through similar situations right now. So there's a lot of smart people trying to figure that question out. but we are working on trying to come up with a good assessment solution. And thankfully, we've invested in this product we actually invested in this product a couple years ago, and we've been working on building our database. So this next year, or actually this fall, we're going to be prepared to launch that. And we've already got some test trials that are being planned right now.
'Cause that's my
Follow-up.
big,
Go ahead, Tony.
that's my big hang up with the online is I'd have been a mathematician if I could have done all my math online.
Yeah.
It's done it for me. You know,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's definitely something that we have to consider and think about. You know, sometimes, you know, online classes at colleges and universities are pretty prevalent at this point, and they certainly have some different ways that they do that. There are also some thought given to larger assessments or assessments that are more covering more material and content that are going to be larger, that those can actually be administered in some sort of a socially distanced, you know, forum, you know, where they come face to face and have to take the assessment. So they do their work online and then they come and take the assessment. So there's a lot of conversation around assessment happening right now.
For those students that are currently getting paper packets, what you just described could work, or would their parents have to proctor a test?
Yeah, we would try and stay away from parents having to proctor tests. You know, we would want to make sure that we're able to offer something that is somewhat secure. In terms of kids that are getting packets and paper packets, there's not a student in our district that doesn't have the opportunity to get a Chromebook and have those assets at this point. If they're choosing to have paper packets just because, you know, it's easier for me to write on the pages or something like that, that is certainly possible. But I think that we would be able to have assets delivered to any child. There's nobody in our school district that would need to not have a Chromebook, you know, if they needed one. So.
Any other questions for Ben? Go ahead, Alicia.
First of all, I want to say thank you. I have had lots of questions through this process, and you've been nothing more than accessible. So thank you for that.
Sure.
I would, I guess, since this is recorded, I mean, publicly, I think we've also done a really good job, and I want to advocate to the community that the SC Cares website and the responsiveness of the staff has been fantastic. If there's questions or concerns, and especially as we start to roll out communication, to make sure that we highlight that there are, you know, people available to answer all those questions. And really, I would say also just to utilize that resource so that they don't all come to just you, Ben. But that, you know, the district does have lots of people that are working and available. With that though, so I've had lots of questions, and now tonight I've got more.
Sure.
So say from a parent perspective, as we start to roll out these opportunities and we start to survey our parents, if a parent, you know, needs a resource to try to figure out what the best modality for their child would be, who do we look to, and, you know, who can help with that decision making for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know, Mr. Heatherton in our district, and I know Mr. Heatherton's on this meeting, is just he's a very brilliant educator, and he's somebody that's been involved all along the way in this conversation. He's certainly somebody that he's monitoring that SC Cares site as well as I am, and so his team, and we utilize our MTSS team, which you've heard, you know, a lot of things from. They really work on most all of our instructional systems. And so Mrs. Preer, Mr. Heatherton, Mr. Claren, the district MTSS team is kind of a flow through in terms of providing supports and resources. So one of the things that they've done, which would just be kind of an example, as we've gone through our trauma-informed care, which is a totally separate initiative, but it's dealing with, you know, kids that, have experienced trauma of some kind. And you've certainly heard him talk about that at board meetings before with the ACEs tests and all of that. So the MTSS team then makes teacher support resources. So they'll come up with flow charts and guides. And, so if a student is responding this way, here are some sentence stems you can use. Here are some resources you could use. So I would envision that as we start to roll this out and we start to work on the communication, that a large part of that MTSS team's role would be to say, okay, for the parent that's not quite sure, what's my pros and cons list, or what is the difference between this or that, and what other types of things might I need to be thinking about? I think what that team would create would be almost like a one-page, for each modality. Here's kind of the nuts and bolts that would help parents make some of those decisions. And then certainly if they need to talk to somebody, a lot of the people on our MTSS team would be more than happy to make themselves available to parents and families as we start to roll that out.
Okay, and then just to add to that, I know this answer, but I just want to make sure that it's clear and everybody knows too. There will still be those students that as a district, with the administration and teachers that make recommendations, student specific, that certain modalities may be required, or I shouldn't say required, more recommended, given their educational history to date so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So a good example of that would be if we have a student that has a federally run program like a special education IEP or a Section 504 plan. Those students might not have as much choice in terms of the modality, because the IEP team, which does consist of parents, so it's a parents, it's the ancillary support staff, the school psychologist, the district special ed team, and then the teachers. That team is ultimately the group that makes the decision on what the system is that the student needs in terms of supports to access their learning. So if the IEP team would say, this student will not be successful in this particular learning modality or another, then the IEP team is going to make the decision on that, and not any one individual. That would be our federally required obligation as a district. So that's that piece. Another part might be that if we have a particular case where there's a student who is just really not being successful in one type of modality, and they're creating situations where they're causing harm to themselves or others, we would possibly force the issue in a particular modality to say, you need to be in this one versus that one because of the fact that it's not working in the current structure. So those are all things we're going to learn and kind of walk through, I think, together. And it's going to be a little difficult at first, but I think it's something that we're certainly capable of addressing as a group.
Great, thank you. I have another question.
Sure.
Do we have, so I know a lot of our focus is on, developing our educational plan. Do we have transitional plans being considered or developed for those groups, the 5th graders to 6th graders, the 8th graders to 9th graders? We've always had, an orientation and transition plan for them. Is that being developed? And if so, how robust? I know scheduling is a piece, but then also just the social aspect of, that transition as well.
Yeah, so we have really several different amazing programs. So I guess the first one I'll get into is the fact that in the transitional year between elementary to middle school and middle school to high school, we started a program a couple years ago called Link. And at the high school, it's called Link. At the middle school, it's called Web. And the design of that program is that the 6th graders get paired with a small group of peers, 6th grade kids. So you've got a group of 10 kids or so. And that group starts doing some team building in the summer. And they also have a mentor who is an 8th grade student. And we have amazing leaders at the building, teachers that are web leaders that kind of run that. Similar context at the high school, it's just called Link. And so freshmen kind of learn the ropes. They learn about where the different parts of the building is. They learn, how to access the counseling office and where to go when you need to get lunch. So those orientation programs are vital. We are continuing to plan as though we're going to have those programs in the fall. So that is absolutely crucial. The one thing that we missed was obviously in a face-to-face setting in the springtime, you have the counselors go down and talk with 8th grade students and vice versa in the 5th grade, and they give them some idea on, hey, this is kind of a mini presentation, what it's going to be like. And in some cases, they actually get to go up and see some of those things. So they've missed that. So our thoughts and conversations have been around when we find out what we're going to be allowed to do, that would be kind of directing our response. I mean, if we're allowed to go back full face-to-face, we're going to run our Lincoln Web programs. We also have Mr. Hocken does a great introduction to middle school program. We're going to continue to run that. And we would probably have to expand all of those things, knowing that the kids didn't necessarily get a chance to try some of the things that they did in the springtime. We're pretty confident that that won't be an issue in terms of being able to offer some additional opportunities. The only limitation we see is what our limitations are from the state. So we're really waiting to see what they say. But regardless of what they say, we will have some sort of transitional plan. So the final, I'm going to call this the worst case scenario. Other people might not call it that, but would be as if we weren't able to have any face-to-face instruction. In that scenario, we would have to do some sort of virtual, here's how you access your class, here's some webinars and some virtual trainings on how to get online and how to get your login and all of those types of things. So we're certainly prepared for that, but we hope it doesn't come to a completely virtual orientation.
Thank you. And I guess I would just add, a consideration, worst case scenario, if, the virtual has to transpire, just like we have SCCS that the parents can access with questions. If there was something, those link leaders and web leaders are another student peer that are often sought out, for those normal kid type questions, teenager type questions. If they had some kind of peer-to-peer support that way, we don't know what these kids are going to be facing in the future. And, without having the traditional face-to-face that, we've all known and understood, different options for them to be able to access that would just be a suggestion.
That's a really great suggestion. And I think that adds another layer for our social workers and our counselors to be able to have another just avenue to get access to them. So I think it's a great suggestion. Mr. Heatherton, I know you're on the call. If you could just make a note of that, I think that's something we can certainly work out for the fall.
And then I have one last question as it pertains to this stuff. Oh, well, actually, no, sorry, two. So with those transition plans, I would hope it sounds like from what I see around the district and just other parents and stuff that I see social media wise, we have an awesome plan developing, and I appreciate the proactiveness. If that attracts some new students, how do we address that if we don't have the traditional setting to be able to orient those children and then engage them into the Swartz Creek community as well?
Well, I think you're right on track with what we hope will happen, and that is that we do have a great district, and I think the more people that see that for what it is, and they're going to get excited about the chance to see, hey, Swartz Creek's offering these different choices, and they're offering these different programs, and maybe that would be a place I wanted to be a part of. So that would be wonderful. In the event, of course, that they're not going to be meeting with us physically, we would probably want to integrate into some of those conversations that we just previously had, where our social workers and our instructional coaches and principals, our principals are very active. You know, they love to reach out and talk to new families, new students. I've received a lot of positive feedback on the way our principals are communicating. And so I think that one of the things that we could do is, you know, really make sure that that communication on the front end is very robust for new families. But of course, if we're meeting face to face, you know, then they'll get to experience a great opportunity to meet a lot of our families. So, in terms of capacity, it would be a really great problem to have, but I don't think that that's going to be an issue. I think, you know, we historically take in more students school of choice than leave us school of choice, and that number is actually, that gap is increasing, which is a good thing. And maybe as a result of this, we could see that gap grow even larger, which would certainly help with any potential budgetary crisis that we're facing.
Great. And then one last question that I don't know if we've addressed at all, but are we operating in all of this planning still on the same calendar?
Yeah, so the only changes to our calendar at this point have been our summer school calendar has been expanded. Students, instead of taking a 2-week summer school program, they're going to actually be taking a 5-week summer school program. A lot of our children that right now are having a difficulty with this, you know, online offering that we've had to do, we're expanding what we're offering in summer school quite a bit. So that's been a change as a result of COVID-19. With relation to the district calendar, we have only had some brief discussions. Obviously, anything that deals with the calendar is something that's negotiated. And so, you know, unless there's a strong desire from the board to make an adjustment there, you know, then we have not approached that topic at this time, because we kind of feel like we're doing a lot of planning and preparation for being able to meet the needs come August, because we still are starting early. We're starting August. I don't want to put a date out there that's incorrect, but we're starting before Labor Day. And so as a result of that, we want to make sure that we have all systems go and in place to really have a good start to the year. And we're also, quite frankly, considering the fact that we've got kids that are going to be coming back to school that haven't been around groups of kids in a school setting for, at that point, 4 or 5 months, and it's going to be a big transition. So we want to make sure we have everything set up. I would probably prefer to do that really well than to rush into something and say, well, we're going to start a week earlier than we anticipated. You know, us not have our buildings ready because they're under construction, you know, us not be fully prepared with our instructional systems. So in the event that we're going to find out in the next few weeks or month that we are going to have to move to a fully online format for the first semester or something like that, then I think it would be worthwhile talking about starting earlier potentially, if that's a desire, because we could certainly meet that requirement if we wanted to. So that's kind of where the discussions have been at relative to the school calendar.
Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Alicia. Good questions as always. I have a question, Ben.
Sure.
I'll play devil's advocate. I'm the state and I say you have to do it one way, and that way is in person. How do we accommodate those families who may not yet be comfortable having their child back in a school setting?
That's a great question. So I think that the question posed might be just slightly different. So at this point, what we can accommodate would be anybody. We could certainly accommodate everybody face to face, but we already have built into our school system an alternative education program through our virtual learning center. That system would be able to stay and remain. So if we had families in that particular scenario that wanted that online environment, we could still offer that under our virtual learning center. I think what's probably going to be more likely is that the state would come and say, you must do it online or, hybrid or something like that. And in that case, of course, that's what we're planning for. We're planning to be able to adapt and adjust to that type of a requirement. I will tell you that we're not really, there's a lot of conversations happening out there. We're not sure who is technically going to be able to make that decision, because all laws that govern schools outside of the school board themselves come from the legislature. So you have a situation where we look at clock hours or what the requirements are for teacher certification and all of those things, and those are heavily regulated through the legislature. The executive office and the governor's office, they have a lot of authority and power as it relates to an emergency declaration, and so certainly our governor was able to cancel schools, completely appropriately as a result of her emergency powers. The challenge that we're seeing now is that the legislature has not granted the extension of her emergency, but she has still declared that. And so schools are starting to ask the question at this point, who decides? Does the legislature, which is our historically our governing body and the group that makes decisions for schools, are they the ones that are going to advise us? Or are we under obligation to comply with the governor? Where does the Michigan Department of Education come into this, or the State Board of Education? So there's just so many questions related to that. But a scenario that somebody from the Upper Peninsula had raised in one of our work groups last week was, what happens if there's disagreement that's unresolved at the state level between the legislature saying one thing and the governor saying another, and the Supreme Court hasn't ruled on it? What happens in the Northern Michigan district was saying, what happens if we decide we're going to go against whatever that order was? So if the governor or the legislature were to say, you must do online school, and that school district said, we don't necessarily know who we're supposed to listen to, so we're making our own decision. I really hope, and I'm certainly, and I know large groups that I'm in are urging the state leaders to get together so that there can be clearer guidance given to schools and given to districts, because we don't want to be in that position where we're unclear or unsure about, whose guidance are we supposed to be following in these scenarios. So our hope is that they get that worked out over the next month or so. But that there are some definite real scenarios brewing where, we're not sure if that's going to be a board decision locally, or if that's a governor's decision, or if that's a legislature's decision, or even if the Michigan Department of Ed weighs in. So lots of different questions relative to who gets to make that call.
Thanks, Ben. I just want to congratulate you and your team again, because this is so innovative. And I think it covers all of our bases. And in the unlikely, hopefully, event of a resurgence of the virus, I think you have a plan that would allow our area to accommodate those students and those parents who may or may not be working again, who might have different challenges ahead of them. So I really applaud you guys. I can't thank you enough. And I know that this is a lot of hours going into this to create the plan. Very, very well thought out.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just I get to go along for the ride. We have some very talented educators, our teachers and instructional coaches and building administrators that are out there, just very, very talented, sharp people. And so I'm lucky to be able to work with them too, and I appreciate your kind words.
Okay. Go ahead, Alicia.
First of all, I echo that. I work with children every day and see, multiple districts, and we are far ahead. And I think you're very humble to say that you didn't have a part to that. Our administrators and our teachers follow a great leader. So I think you lead by example, which is what we need. But I did want to follow up on so your question, Carrie, about in your response, Ben, about utilizing the VLC for those students that would not be comfortable if we do go to the traditional setting. Are we equipped to do elementary, or would we need to, is that part of the plan in, evaluating our capabilities to be able to do that if there's an elementary student or family that needs to utilize that
Yeah,
system?
absolutely. So, yes, we would be able to accommodate that, but we couldn't accommodate that presently. So it's something that we're planning for. To give you just a little bit of more detail, we have, Canvas is a great product, but online learning through a learning management system requires at least some competency regarding a computer, right? And being able to get on and do those things. That can be very challenging for a K2 student. And so one of the things that we've looked at is, while we will have Canvas, we're also looking at another product that's for our K2 students called Seesaw. And Seesaw has a lot of content and activities built in for children that are really pre-K through third grade, but it's really for creating an opportunity for those kids to have content and accessible technology that is not overly cumbersome to them, so that they can continue to learn and do so in a way that's developmentally appropriate. So I would tell you that the Seesaw program is something that we're very, very interested in, because we know that K2 learners are just very different, and they require a lot more support than somebody who's a fifth grade or older student who has already developed some computer competency.
That's great. Although I think there's a bunch of kindergartners that could probably teach me how to do Zoom better than I can, but.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree with that.
For sure.
Okay. Last call for questions for Ben. All right. And I know you have a lot to share about the budget.
I do. I'm going to start by just kind of prefacing this particular discussion. Obviously, we know that we've shut down of almost all sectors of our economy until recently. Certainly there are different rationales and reasons for different things being shut down. That is really not the school's issue, or not our decision to weigh in on. But what I would say is one of the things that is a byproduct of those situations is the fact that we are going to see a reduction in state revenue, most definitely. So we looked at most recent numbers from some of the state economists are between $1 and $3 billion shortfall in the state budget as a result of obviously a continued lack of sales tax. Property values are going down, businesses are going under, and as a result of the pandemic, there just are economic consequences. And so the conversations that are obviously raging between policymakers and lawmakers are, how do we address that situation? School districts are kind of left in the middle of all of that. And so obviously the largest portion of the state budget goes to fund public education. The school aid fund is a fund that cannot necessarily withstand a tremendous amount of strain. We've talked extensively. I think you've received some of my presentations over the last few years about the School Research Finance Collaborative that talked through how school funding has been woefully inadequate compared to other states. And the largest cut that public education has ever received was back in 2009, when we took a $470 per student decrease. Obviously, we had a pretty big recession back in 2008, and that really impacted our revenues. So when we got to that $470 cut, districts were forced to make a lot of different decisions. Swartz Creek was no different than that. I've talked with a lot of superintendents who have told me, and I've even talked to our own teachers and people in our community, that we're just now recovering from 2008. So the unfortunate news is we're going to see something that is significant as a result of this budgetary shortfall. To the fullest extent yet, we do not know. And so at this point, what we are doing here in the district is we're starting to plan for what our targets would actually look like. So what I mean by that is, what type of a budgetary cut would we expect to see? Well, obviously, $1 billion shortfall in the budget would result in like $1,000 per student cut. I think of districts that are in pretty rough financial shape, which Swartz Creek is certainly not in rough financial shape. We've been able to be fiscally responsible over the years, and we've been able to make some decisions, especially recently, where we've been able to put money into the bank. But there are districts that have not made those same decisions, or there have been things that have been outside of their control that have caused them to be very, very close to having no fund balance or not enough to cover any kind of cut. And I just think that those types of school districts would have no choice but to close their doors, and possibly permanently. And I just, there's a part of me that doesn't believe that that's going to be a feasible thing. So as a result of that, we're just not sure. So I preface this conversation by saying there's a possibility that the state could say, we want to shift some of our funds for roads and other infrastructure projects to schools. There's a possibility that the state could say, we want to dip further into our emergency reserves. There's a possibility that the federal government could say, we're going to try and help public education in this way. We just really don't know what it's going to be. But based on projections, we are looking at a pretty substantial cut to our budget. I'm going to share my screen with you just to be able to just enumerate that. I have sent this to all of you, so you have a copy of it in your email, but I will put it on the screen so that you can view it, and I can kind of go through it. So this is a document that you have, and in this document, what you're seeing at the top here is basically our budgetary planning for next year. So what we believe is that we are going to be taking a tremendous amount of money from this year, and we're going to save that money and pull it into next year. The best case scenario in this top number is that we'd be able to pull $1.3 million up into next year. Certainly worst case scenario, we think we can hit that $1.1 million mark. Why are we able to bring that much money into next year? Well, it's on a couple reasons. Number one, we have slashed and halted all spending for the last 2 months. With what we saw coming, we've not made purchase orders. We've not done anything outside of what our base operation would be. Number two, we have not had any buses running to pick up students. And so we're saving on fuel costs. We're saving on operational costs. We were able to close our pool down and shut the heater and the boiler off. We were able to turn our heat down in all of our buildings. So all of those things add up to fairly substantial savings. And so we believe that as a result of that, and also for cutting our building budgets back, we can pull possibly $1.1 to $1.3 million into next year. That's going to be really important because that's going to be our first way of shouldering the blow of any type of cut that we're going to get. I don't believe that all school districts are going to be able to do this. So again, really quick action on our administrative team's part and being able to kind of plan for this. If I look at this next line down, and that is the change in foundation allowance per pupil. Currently, that number is $8,111 per student. In a best case scenario, we're looking at a $300 cut. In a middle of the road scenario, we're looking at a $500 cut. And a worst case scenario, we're looking at a $900 cut. Now, I will say that It's possible that it could be better than these projections, and it's possible that it could be worse than these projections, but we just don't know yet. So what we're trying to do is establish something that we could look at and say, okay, what's the number that we're going to be looking at as a result of our budget? So in terms of this next line, this deals with how many students we may lose. Again, we don't know how many students we would gain. So that number is also going to be a projection. So as a result of what you see here on this bold line would be the revenue changes, or what type of a decrease we'd be expecting. In our best case scenario here, it's about a $1.4 million reduction to our revenue. And then if you look at our worst case, it's about a $4 million reduction to our revenue. Obviously, that's massively substantial, and that would require us to take some actions that would require a lot of board discussion and discretion and dialogue. When you get down here into the expenditure changes, these are just things that we were able to save as a result of this year not being as necessary to run buses and all of those other types of things. Well, in a typical budget planning year, assuming that we're going to have some semblance of face-to-face instruction in school, we are going to have those costs added back in. So when you look at the expenditure changes, so down here at the bottom, it shows the expenditure increase based on what we're going to end up with this year's budget. You end up with this line right here, which says the projected operating surplus or deficit, which is basically your revenue minus your expenditures. So when you get to the real number, in a best case scenario, we're looking at about a $2.3 million shortfall. In the worst case scenario, we're looking at up to a $5 million shortfall. So these numbers are obviously very significant. And as I stated before, we are healthy. We've been able to pull a number of dollars into our fund balance over the last few years, but there's not a fund balance big enough to shoulder the blow of these types of cuts without making some changes to our operation. So I just wanted to let you understand the way that that document is being built, and we are going to be making changes to this based on information that we get from the state. You will need to know that over the course of the next week, we're going to hear guidance from the May Revenue Estimating Conference, which means that we will have an opportunity to hear from state policymakers on what they're projecting in terms of revenues, losses, and what that effect would be on the school aid fund, and likely what types of numbers we could actually start to plan for. And that's going to be kind of our best guided guess. And I want you, and I obviously know that many of you know this, we've talked about it, but I also want the community to be prepared for the fact that depending on what happens as a result of this economic shutdown, we will have to be having some fairly quick discussions on our operation and what we're doing. Does anybody have any questions for me on any of the numbers or assumptions? Okay.
Ben, I saw yesterday that there's some conversation about a 25% cut to the educational budget in Michigan. Does that not filter down to the school district level?
Yes, it absolutely does. You know, that you could almost take it in an extreme case and just apply that to a local school district. How exactly they would determine that cut is yet to be determined. Some of the things that they can do that would help, but it would certainly hurt the universities, would be to look at how they address K-12 funding versus university funding. I know that there are some federal stimulus dollars for universities being talked about, but I'm not exactly sure how they would choose to divvy up a cut that's across the board like that. And so what we're going to see over the next few weeks is really how they're planning to prepare to set budget numbers based on what their revenue projections are.
Mr. Meinke, could you put this into perspective from the eyes of a student? Is there anything that a student would see next year that might be different as a result of our running deficits?
Jacob, the goal every time that we have a budget deficit is to make sure that a student never notices the difference. That's the best answer I can give you. Depending on how severe the cut is, we can't always guarantee that. So I'm not going to speak for our district right now, but I could speak for others and say that in a district that was maybe not financially healthy, or the cut was so substantial, they may have larger class sizes. They may have buildings that have to operate differently. They may have buildings that are consolidated. They may have less programs, in terms of, arts, music, extracurriculars, sporting events, athletics. All of those things are expenditures that are what we believe vital to a full learning experience for children. But it really just depends on how severe the cut is. But most of the time, whenever we receive a cut, our biggest goal is to make sure that children see minimal impact in our services and programs. That's the prevailing philosophy that we tend to operate under.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Ben? So Ben, at a future meeting, we will be getting some additional information. I know Mike's been great about sharing financial information, but we'll be having a conversation in June.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be talking about this in June. I would tell you that we're going to have our typical statutorily required truth and taxation meeting. Chris will be presenting a budget to the board, and then we will have to approve a budget by the end of June. So we are required by law to pass a budget resolution by the end of June. So we're going to be picking these targets and shooting for a budget, and then we'll be spending the summer planning and preparing to meet those numbers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We have 3 board action items tonight. The first is the GISD 2021 budget review and approval. That is in your packet. Jessica, did you attend that meeting?
I did, and I
Okay.
can tell you they gave a very nice presentation, and in all the districts, all the superintendents, Dr. Hagel said had approved the budget, and all of the school districts present. There was all but one school district present, and it passed unanimously with all the school district support.
Okay, that's good to know. So there is a rather lengthy document that has a lot of whereas statements. I'll reference that in the motion, but I would entertain a motion to adopt or approve the GISD budget.
So moved.
Jessica and Mike, any comments or questions? Okay. Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approve the GISD 2020-21 budget review and approval process as presented. Joanne, would you like to do a roll call, please?
Sure. Mike,
Yes.
Alicia,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
and Carrie.
Yes, thank you. Okay, motion passes. Next, we have our Schools of Choice Board Resolution. Did you want to talk about that first, Ben?
Yeah, this is an annual resolution that we pass, that we put before the board. It requires board action. This resolution allows us to accept and to take school of choice students from within our county. and it allows us to be able to be open enrollment. So this is done annually, and if you certainly have any questions at any time, you can always let me know.
In reading this, are we, I guess, are we doing both, or do we have to choose between one or the other?
No, you're doing both. The first resolution is for schools within our county, and then the other resolution is for districts outside our county that are contiguous to our county. So, you know, for example, we have students from Durand that come here that are in Shiawassee County. So both resolutions are a part of tonight's action item.
Okay. That was my only confusion. I'm like, how do we pick one over the other?
Sure.
But okay, if it's both, I get it.
Yep.
Thanks for pointing that out, Alicia. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adopt the Schools of Choice Board Resolution.
So moved.
Support.
Tony and Jessica, any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approve the Schools of Choice Board Resolution, Section 105 and 105C as presented. Joanne, can you do roll call, please?
Yep. Tony,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and Alicia.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. All right, and third on our board action items tonight is our student board representative policy adoption. If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Jessica? And I didn't hear who was next. Brian?
Yeah, support.
Any additional comments or questions?
I would just like to comment, the reason this was added on last minute is to make sure that we acknowledge all of Jacob's hard work and make this his final stamp as he exits.
Good job.
Thanks for that, Alicia. Okay, be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approve the Student Board of Education representative policy as presented. Alicia, can you do roll call, please?
Me or Joanne?
I'm sorry, Joanne or Alicia.
I'm like, I could.
Alicia,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
and Carrie.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Jacob, for your commitment to this role. And you've set the bar pretty high. So I hope you're able to assist in selecting your successor and then mentor them a little bit. So we've really appreciated having you here.
Thank you. Well, I mean, really the pleasure is all mine. This has been one of the greatest honors of my career in high school.
Thank you. All right, now we have an opportunity for public comment. Do we have any public comment?
So I'll ask Travis, did we have any public asked to participate in public comment tonight?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, just to remind everyone, there is an opportunity that's published for people to make public comment, and Travis monitors that. So thanks, Travis, for that. And we will move on to comments and questions from the board. Go ahead, Alicia.
Okay. First of all, I do have another question. You stated the timeline, Ben, for graduation and prom for our seniors. Do we have a VLC graduation date?
Mr. Nolan is working on that right now, so I don't have an exact date locked down yet, but we will have a commencement of some kind for our VLC students, both for our students that are graduating with from high school, and also our adult ed program with the GED program. So yes, we will have something. And again, it'll be scheduled in July with an understanding that we're not sure of what type of methodology we can use.
Okay, thank you. I would like to publicly congratulate all of our seniors, but most especially our own Jacob, and wish you the best of luck off to Harvard. So that's still, I think we all just want to keep bragging about that. I think it's awesome that you represent our community going that far and that big. And then my last just suggestion in planning for our next round of committee meetings. I had sent this comment to Joanne, but since we've got everybody on here, I would just throw it out there. I like the idea of kind of doing them back to back, especially as the more of us that can participate. But recognizing that technology plays a factor in time and the amount of information that we're discussing, questioning if we need to lengthen each individual meeting just a little bit to make sure that we've got enough time to cover everything.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we could also do is, co-merge some of the meetings. So you could do policy and academic achievement in a 2-hour chunk. That way you're not worried about switching over. And I think that we could certainly accommodate that. A lot of the people that want to attend them both. So keeping in mind, whatever we publicly announce as far as a link, so the public can attend, but then also for us, I think that might just make it a little bit more efficient. Just a suggestion. Yeah.
And I finally have nothing else.
Mike, you had a question?
No, I got a comment. I'd like to thank Travis for all the work he's done on this Zoom so that we can have these meetings and have our committee meetings. He's done a great job, and for his job on the hot spots. And I can attest to the public that these hot spots work just great. Thanks, Travis.
That's great.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for actually being our guinea pig so that we know that they work well. Ryan?
Yes, I just want to, Jacob, since I met you last year at Hometown Days, I was very, very impressed then. And you had a question, you had concerns, you did something about it. You got on board, you were very proactive in what you did and how you followed, and you've been just an amazing person to work with, student to work with this senior year. So you're going from a dragon to a pilgrim. But you just know this, Jacob, you'll always be a dragon.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. And in fact, I did a little research. They don't really use the Pilgrim mascot. They just call themselves the Crimsons. And that's fine with me because I would rather stay a dragon.
Okay, I thought it was a pilgrim. I thought what I read.
No, it is officially a pilgrim, but it kind of just fell by the wayside.
Oh, okay. Okay. You're still a dragon.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I will say thank you and congratulations to Jacob, and I'm really glad that we were able to approve the student representation guidelines and everything tonight. And I also want to thank Christina. She did a wonderful job as well as the alternate student representative. And I'm a little confused because I don't think you go off to Harvard yet. And technically, if our commencement's not until July, Jacob, you are our representative until after July 19th.
Yes. Well, we'll see how it plays out. I am.
Yeah. It's all good. And as Mike said, I was thinking about this earlier when Travis was talking, and all of our staff, you are all really rock stars and superheroes, and we have a wonderful district, and I really appreciate being able to hear all the wonderful things in such a difficult time that we're doing. So I just want to acknowledge that. That's it.
Yeah, and to the board, I just want to say, if everything works out, you may have another individual maybe at your next regular meeting or even committee meetings. We'll just have to see how quickly things move there. But that's certainly my goal, and I'll see if we can make that happen with the high school administration. And Mr. Meinke, I did want to ask, will the policy be reflected in the board docs program?
Yeah, it will. It usually takes about 3 weeks to be fully uploaded into that because it's done through a different party and they have to vet it through the attorneys and all of that. So it will eventually be there, and it'll be there before you head off to college. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And I want to thank our teachers. We weren't here last week to say thank you to all of our teachers. Appreciate them very much, and all of our administrators and everything that you do for our families and our kids. And Jacob, good luck. And I hope I know you're coming back, but I hope you come back for your 3 minutes of public comment at some point as well. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Mike and Jessica, any comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Let Joanne know what your availability is if you haven't already, and I will let you know, Joanne, I'm available